Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
There's a major event coming soon on British television that's just too important for some people to miss.
G'day, I'm Paul Hogan. I've just slipped up here from down under to ensure that all my personal friends are tuned into Channel 4 when they kick off on the 2nd of November. She's right. Which way's the palace from here?
The Paul Hogan Show is just part of a brand new package of entertainment coming your way when Channel 4 takes to the air on November the 2nd.
Whether you were there at the time or not, I'm sure we've all seen this historic television moment.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be able to say to you, welcome to Channel 4.
This was the launch of Channel 4 on the 2nd of November 1982. Britain's fourth terrestrial television channel had hit the airwaves, except it had been beaten to the post by just one day. On the 1st of November, viewers in Wales only would bear witness to the launch of the actual fourth British terrestrial channel, one that was tied to Channel 4 of course, but bore an entirely different name and promised to offer an entirely different kind of service. For this was the birth of S4C. But the road was long to get to this moment, so let's go back to the days of black and white. During the initial post-war boom of television in the 1950s, viewers in Wales were served by programmes from the BBC. In terms of the language of said regional programming that was offered for Wales, most programmes remained in English as opposed to Welsh itself. Granted, when looking at the population of Wales both back then and indeed today, the Welsh language falls within the minority when compared to those who speak English as their first language. For those who had Welsh as their preferred first language, this posed a problem when it came to television. The few Welsh-speaking programmes there were often broadcast at really inconvenient times, generally away from the peak viewing period of the early evening. 1958 saw the arrival of ITV for the nation, but only to viewers in South Wales, thanks to the company Television Wales and the West.
The dawning of commercial television in Wales. Times and technology were very different then, with the notion of selling advertising to run a television station a very new and untested concept.
Parts of the north and east of Wales had been able to receive ITV transmissions from the likes of Granada and ABC since the late 50s, though the reception of these could vary. There were some parts of Wales that, due to geography primarily, could not receive any ITV broadcasts whatsoever. It wouldn't be until 1962, with the launch of Teledu Cymru, that the majority of audiences in Wales had some sort of access to the ITV network. One stipulation for Teledu Cymru was that it was to broadcast 10 hours of Welsh language programming per week, and it had to be produced in-house, not imported from other companies in the network. However, the fortunes of this franchise holder were to turn sour almost immediately after it launched in the autumn of 1962. Delays in getting transmitters up and running, as well as Welsh language content from Granada being pulled, would result in local homegrown productions ceasing less than a year after launch, in the spring of 1963. TWW would eventually buy out Teledu Cymru for control of the region, ensuring they could broadcast to the entirety of Wales, though they would retain the Teledu Cymru name partly to ensure some continuity for the viewers at home. By the late 60s, shake-ups in the ITV network would see turmoil in the Wales region. TWW would have their licence revoked, now being awarded to Harlech Television, or HTV for short. With TWW ceasing transmissions early in March 1968, Harlech was not yet ready to start their own broadcasts. Therefore, an emergency service had to be set up, utilising programming that had already been completed under TWW. This emergency service was unbranded and would last for a couple of months until May, when Harlech Television could finally make its debut in the region. HTV would go on to some great successes in the 1970s and 80s, and is remembered fondly by not just Welsh audiences, but by those who take an interest in the ITV network as a whole. It produced lots of Welsh language content, much of it very popular. It had a nightly news programme in Welsh that aired at the primetime slot of 6 PM, and it had a particular knack for producing top quality children's programming, both in English and Welsh. This was partly due to the establishment of the HTV Junior Drama Workshop, a springboard for many a young actor looking to get into television. Such HTV examples include Children of the Stones, King of the Castle, Arthur of the Britons, and Robin of Sherwood. Whilst HTV was riding high, and did offer Welsh viewers programming that was in their native language, the idea of a fully dedicated Welsh language channel was still seen as a pipe dream by many. There were the smattering of programmes on both HTV and the regional opt-out for the BEEB, BBC Cymru Wales, but those who really pushed for more Welsh language programming on TV were not satisfied with this arrangement. Throughout the 70s, there was increasing talk of a fourth terrestrial television channel coming to fruition. Even when details were vague, activists who were invested in the matter pushed that this supposed fourth channel be one dedicated to the Welsh language, in full.
And now the second programme in the present repeated series for those learning Welsh. Dewch I siarad am Gymru hefo Mai Robbins ac Alun Evans.
In 1977, that dream came true, but not in the world of television. BBC Radio Cymru launched as a fully Welsh language station, and whilst this was heralded as a step in the right direction, it simply wasn't enough. By the end of the 70s, Britain wasn't in the best state. Years of hyperinflation, mass unemployment, and general unrest had taken its toll, and as the world looked towards the 80s, there were calls for change on the horizon. In 1979, that year's general election saw the Conservative Party take the win, with Margaret Thatcher becoming Prime Minister. Out of the many promises and pledges made by both leading political parties, one of them had been the introduction of a Welsh language television channel to help appease voters within Wales itself. However, things were about to get a lot uglier. Early into their run in government, the Home Secretary, William Whitelaw, decided that a Welsh language fourth channel was not to be. A government going against something they promised in their manifesto? Never. For those who had long advocated for such a service, they started to take matters one step further. This included acts such as not paying the licence fee, and even some going to organised sit-in protests in studios operated by both HTV and the BBC. It was clear that the government would have to take some action to rectify this outcry that they themselves had caused. A Welsh Language Television Council was established, featuring members from the major broadcasters of the day, namely the BBC and ITV, alongside the IBA and Open Broadcasting Authority, or OBA. After the initial concepts of a Welsh language channel fell through, there was discussion that BBC Two would become the bastion for Welsh programming. The idea was that Welsh language programming would air on BBC Two Cymru Wales, the regional variation of the youngest BBC channel. However, given that this would cause scheduling havoc, this plan was ultimately abandoned. Problems seemed to reach a boiling point in late 1980, when Gwynfor Evans, the then president of political party Plaid Cymru, claimed that if the Conservative government did not honour its initial pledge to bring about a Welsh language TV service, then he, out of protest, would go on hunger strike. Quite the severe move. In the end, the government would concede defeat, and just as planned, a Welsh language channel was back on the radar. In early 1981, a new name was chosen for this channel, to be dubbed S4C, which stood for Sianel Pedwar Cymru. Translated into English, it reads as Channel 4 Wales. The process was underway, and transmitters all over were being adapted by the IBA in order to carry the new fourth channel. However, for some bizarre reason, not a single transmitter located in northern Wales was converted. That's significant as it was in these areas which held large amounts of audiences who spoke the Welsh language, and the new service, designed primarily for them, would not be accessible. This would be an ongoing issue for the next few years, but nothing could stop S4C from hitting the airwaves in late 1982. Whether ready or not, Britain's fourth terrestrial television channel was about to arrive. Now, remember, I'm not talking about Channel 4, at least not the one most viewers would recognise. Whilst promotion and adverts in all kinds of mediums were ramping up, building excitement for the arrival of Channel 4, it's easy to forget that S4C, the Welsh variant in some ways, beat them to the post by just a single day. At 6 PM on the 1st of November 1982, it was time for the Welsh language to hit the prime time.
Croeso cynnes iawn iawn I chi ymuno ni yma am y tro cynta ar aelwyd Sianel 4 Cymru.
S4C's inaugural programme followed the route of many a channel's first night, with a special introduction, in this case by Owen Edwards, the chief executive, and then a variety of different programmes, one of which in particular would go on to stand above much of the rest in collective memory. For the birth of S4C marked the birth of Super Ted. Not many remember that Super Ted was originally in Welsh, as hugely popular airings across the rest of the United Kingdom would take place in late 1983. The franchise would go on to be sold to several countries around the world. Not bad at all for a little stuffed bear whose creator was determined to remain Welsh. With the new service up and running, right ahead of the looming Channel 4 from London, how was S4C presented to the rest of the UK?
S4C, the Welsh version of Channel 4, started up earlier this evening. The station will carry some programmes in English, but all those at peak viewing times will be in Welsh.
November the 1st, 1982. The Welsh language is in decline, but someone is coming to the rescue.
On the Super Ted.
Super Ted is the star and symbol of Sianel 4 Cymru, S4C for short, which slipped uneventfully onto the air at 6 o'clock tonight. The new channel is an expensive political gesture to the Welsh language and those who campaign on its behalf, a cultural lifeline that's costing £20 million. Most Welsh people won't understand its programmes. Only 1 in 5 here speak the language. The 500,000 or so who do will now have, per head, by far the world's most expensive television service.
It's fair to say that news reports such as this one from the BBC make out S4C to be a costly and ultimately perplexing service to have got off the ground. A relatively low audience reach, and the sheer fact that in some areas audiences voted to have Channel 4 as opposed to S4C really does show you how little the Welsh language was actually spoken by its native population.
In the South Wales valleys, television will soon be piped in on a cable that can carry only 4 programmes. Everybody was polled. Did they want the Welsh or the new UK Channel 4? 9 out of 10 demanded the London version, but the government is insisting they get the Welsh channel whether they like it or not.
Also keep in mind that S4C's broadcasting hours were not entirely filled with Welsh language programmes. There were various movies and Channel 4 imports shown on S4C, but great lengths were made to ensure that the primetime slots of television would be reserved for the Welsh language programmes that campaigners and activists had gone to great lengths to achieve. Having now helped bring about a Welsh language television channel, the man who threatened to starve himself to death over it, Gwynfor Evans, had this to say about the Welsh language's future.
I think it's going to enhance the chances of the language. I don't think this is going to save the language of itself, but certainly without this, the language would stand no chance at all of survival.
After years of constant campaigning, after feeling let down by the offerings of the major broadcasters, Welsh language speakers finally had a television channel they felt worthy enough to call their own. As the decades went on, despite trials and tribulations that would hit the channel, S4C continued to grow, find its identity in the television market, and also expand on its original remit, to commit to Welsh language programming for Welsh viewers. When it began back in 1982, around 22 hours of programmes a week were broadcast in Welsh. By the time of the digital switchover, nearly 30 years later, that number had risen to well over 100. Independent producers, as well as bigger names such as ITV Cymru Wales and BBC Cymru Wales, continued to produce programming for S4C. Gwynfor Evans had his concerns about how the Welsh language would survive long term, even after S4C came to be. He passed away in 2005, but I'm sure he'd be glad to know that S4C nowadays is a wholly Welsh language channel. Television may not be the sole factor in the survival of a little spoken language, but S4C across the last 40 years has helped the Welsh language enjoy primetime programming in its native land, offered countless shows and opportunities for people to learn and embrace the language, and all the heritage and culture that comes with it. It may not get the highest viewing figures, it may barely even have an audience tune into certain programmes, but S4C was, and still remains, important. Its legacy is assured within the annals of television history as the first predominantly Welsh-speaking channel, and as Britain's true fourth terrestrial television channel.
Some programmes may end up with an audience of only 75,000. but S4C's director insists it's vital for those who will watch.
We have our native language, the language of our homes. The language of my home is Welsh, and the television set is an extension of the family by now. And I expect, along with all the other Welsh speakers, that new member of the family, the television box in the corner, the television set, should, for however long in a week, speak the same language as the rest of the family.
Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Sean Knock, Dord Khan, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Liam Domain, AJ Mac 200017, Jen, Traffy, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Evan Hart 42 Radio, Tim Ripley, 40-something Manchild, Mr. J McLeod, James Wallace, Ben, Stephen Oliver, Shadow Fiend 180X, Swan Ronson, Adam Gamer, Sir Fonzie Daz, Tegan, Matthew Elif, Pigeon's House, Dave Batten, Leonard Starbuck, Kevin Mallon, Seed Diffusion, and Liam Turner, our AMTV staff members.